the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar. Mr.
Can you hear me, Madam Chairwoman?
I can hear you.
That sounds good. Well, I want to thank all the witnesses, especially Mr. Bennett from my district. Ken, it's good seeing you again. Mr. Sellers, Mr. Gates, thank you for attending. You know, the majority is very short-sighted, and this hearing today reminds me of 2017, I think, maybe 2018, when we actually, one of our own members from the other side actually introduced legislation, Mr. Raskin, for the Election Vendor Security Act. Part of that was due in terms to a election security vendor infrastructure subcommittee hearing on the U.S. Senate side in Homeland Security, which basically said that the equipment or this the vendors or this machines were potentially 100% corruptible. Interesting. Now I want to bring back into point a film. And I'm not usually complimentary of films, but this one is very interesting, released in March of 2020. It's called Kill Chain by the HBO Films. And basically what it is they go in with a security expert, cybersecurity expert by the name of Harry Hursty. I think most of you would admit he is very good at what he does. And basically what he talks about, he goes systematically through an election and these machines. You know, in the old days, in the 20th century, I guess when my hair was still around and it's not so gray, they were basically adding machines with a light. But today they're controlled by computers. And all computers can be hacked. And what Harry Hursty does is he goes through a number of scenarios and people and experts to show how these machines can be corrupted. Yes, the results we see here supposedly don't change the outcome, but there's more to the story. It's how those votes can be manipulated by the machine, and then the calibration or the certification of those ballots is covered up by the machine. Don't take my word for it. I want you to go back to watch Kill Chain. I think it's a wonderful documentary that doesn't take a partisan look either way. For at least for most of it. But it highlights a series of problems that exist. Undeniably. Hackers can make this change. And we have problems, as Mr. Biggs talked about with Maricopa County from the 2018 election. The Board of Supervisors adamantly and valiantly took back some of their power and oversight of that election. But Mr. Fontes kept custody of the voter registration rolls. Very important when we start dissecting what the cyber ninjas did. Second of all, they want the scrutiny from private entities like cyber ninjas, because the certification of these audit folks is not exactly what you really want. And I don't think it's what Mr. Raskin and anybody else wants either. You don't want government okaying a process and then certifying that process. You want somebody independent of that aspect. So from the standpoint of that we see this, there's problems. How about me? Where did it come from me? The day after the election, I was contacted by two individuals. One had security and fraud jobs with the banking world. The other one goes from fraud from the Department of Defense. They were monitoring the election through Edison, the amalgamator. It was providing information to the media. What they saw in Arizona, they were watching the Secretary of State at the same time. What they saw from Arizona drew their attention quickly first. They saw numbers of 90-some thousand, 60-some thousand, 40-some thousand ballots drop into Donald Trump's category and then quickly come out verbatim. Now, there may be a reason for that. We don't know. But then they started watching there and looking to the dumps. And what I mean by that is there's a first dump, there's multiple dumps, maybe 9 or 10 through the night. So if they're random, which they should be, if the first dump in Coconino County was 61% for Joe Biden, you would expect the rest of the time, the rest of the dumps, to be very similar. 58, 62, 55, and so forth. Not 40, 38, 35. That drove their big question mark for them. There were 4 anomalies in our state: Maricopa County, Pima County, or Tucson, Coconino County up in Flagstaff, and Pinal County down just southeast at Phoenix. Interestingly enough, the top 2 election officials in Pinal County actually resigned the very next morning. That doesn't draw any attention, does it? So it gets even worse. So they go, the election, Maricopa Election Committee actually takes 100 random duplicate ballots. These are ballots that can't go through the machine for smudges, tears, whatever. And you do a new one with judges from both sides of the aisle looking over, making sure that it's done right. So when you run them through the machine, you should have a 0% error rate. They had a 3% error rate. And in Maricopa County, that represents over 90,000 ballots. Wow, we got a problem. Margin of error, margin of loss was right under 11,000. So then they did 2,500 random duplicate ballots. They never finished. They locked them up. We were told that there was double-digit error rates. So the 2 guys, going back to the 2 guys, they estimated between 450,000 and 700,000 ballots had some electronic or some kind of issue. It still may be valid, but it had an issue. Well, if you take 3 times 3 at 90,000, you got to talk. You're talking about over 200,000 or 270,000 ballots. This should be a cause for an audit. Shouldn't be that you're suing the state Senate who has jurisdiction over you, and we had to go to court for that aspect. And yes, the state Senate won in that discard. But we saw the county supervisors lock them up, sue at every case they want. They lost at that Superior Court judge that they don't have to answer to the state Senate. They do. They didn't provide different mechanisms, so they didn't allow a full canvas. They didn't have access to the routers. They didn't have full access for voter signature acuity and documentation and accuracy.
The gentleman
There's troubling problems here, and hopefully I'll be able to get some time yielded to me so I can explain even more.
Okay.
There should have been an audit based on this information and this information alone. Thank you.
Okay, the gentleman has